Hi everybody and welcome to the What's New webinar for the latest release of Mission Control. Version 1.63 is going to be available on the App Exchange as of the 13th of January 2023. So let's jump in and take a look at what's new. So we've got a number of new features along with some enhancements to some of our core product functionality as well. New features are the rate card financials that gives you the ability to create a rate card of entries for an individual customer. We'll cover that off in a bit of detail. We're also introducing phases as an optional layer that sits between a project and milestones. We've got a working day custom setting that allows you to define what happens when you adjust the end dates as to whether working days get added or reduced. A couple of enhancements to things like the log time component. So you now have the ability to choose what fields are displayed on that log time component via a field set. The Gantt chart has a number of different enhancements. We'll cover those off, as does the timesheet. We've expanded the use of the role availability records on key pages like the scheduler, resource planner, and timesheet. A number of enhancements to the meeting manager, as well as the create actions page, and then there's a couple of additional enhancements as well. Okay, so let's dive in and take a closer look at each one of those. So the rate card financials, this is two new objects. You've got the rate card, which sits underneath a particular account record, and then underneath the rate card, you've got your rate card entries. And we've introduced a feature where you're specifying rates for a function. So a function being project manager, designer, developer, trainer. So rather than having to go into detail for each individual person, you can set the rates for functions, and then that same function field is available on the role record, so you can attribute each of your roles to a particular function. So, for example, if Colin, Mick, and Kelly they all have the function of project manager, then they would all use the project manager rates within the rate card. So those options exist for both the billing rate and the cost rate. So the phases, exciting inclusion really to the project plan. So it really gives you a fifth layer, an option for a fifth layer. So just to be clear, phases don't have to be used. You might have smaller projects where you don't need that level of detail. But and we know we do have some customers that are managing large, long, complex projects, and they want to be able to group their milestones within a phase. So that phase gets introduced between the project and the milestone. All of the information within the phase record will automatically be updated based on the information that's held on all of the related milestones. And as you can see there on the screenshot, it shows you've got that fifth layer. So that layer between the orange layer on the Gantt chart there is representing the phases, and so that really now gives you the ability to have like 6 layers of project plan. You've got your program, you've got your project, you've got your milestone, your action, and then your checklist. Okay, so this is a setting. So we introduced a feature a few releases back where you can specify the working days, and the end date will be calculated automatically based on start date plus working days. To give you more flexibility around the rules that get applied there, we've got this setting. So when so it allows you to determine when you adjust the start date, does the end date get adjusted, so it's start date plus working days, or do you adjust the working days to be the end date minus the start date? So we've got like customers that have requirements for both scenarios. So we've got a setting on the control pad that allows you to determine that, and we'll cover that off in more detail as we go through the demo. So the log time component, which is obviously accessible from the utility bar, various pages like the whiteboard, the checklist board, the action pad, and so on. This is a component that up until now has been provided with a set number of fields available to you. Now you can actually customize the layout of that by specifying which fields get displayed on there by adding fields to the field set called log time component fields. So number of enhancements to the Gantt chart. So we've added in preset filters on the standalone Gantt chart, which allows you to obviously save the filters. So you might be applying filters to across multiple different fields. Now, previously you would have to do that every time you loaded the Gantt chart. Now you can actually save those and have those preset. Previously, global holidays and like standard non-working days would be displayed on the Gantt chart. They would be grayed out. Now all holidays will actually be displayed. So whether it's an individual person taking PTO for a day, whether it's an entire team taking like a state public holiday, so all of those will actually be will be visible. In addition to that, we had existing logic everywhere else in the system that if you change the action owner and the incoming action owner was on holiday during that time, then the action would be rescheduled accordingly. That logic has now been included on the Gantt chart as well. You've also got the ability to add fields to various field sets to add additional information into the hover tooltips that appear when you hover over each of the bars on the Gantt chart. We're also introducing the start and end date warning icons that are visible on other pages like the project overview and the whiteboard. They're going to be visible on the Gantt chart. That's going to be controlled by a setting. And you can now also change the action owner via the inline edit functionality. So again, number of enhancements to the timesheet. We've got a feature where you can quickly collapse rows. So if you've got a number of actions relating to a particular project and you just want to declutter, you can collapse that out of the way, and all of those actions for that one project will collapse out of the way. So you can quickly collapse and expand all of the records that are displayed. We're also introducing persistent filters on the timesheet as well, so you can apply particular filters. So you can if you're wanting to reduce the number of records that are visible for you. There's some changes to the approvals tab, so you can now see your time logs grouped by checklist item. You've also got the ability to add custom fields via a field set, and some additional settings to just give various customers additional flexibility on how they're using the timesheet. So if you're not using the approvals, then you can declutter the timesheet by hiding those approval status fields. You've also got a setting to where you basically allow yourself to start the week with a blank timesheet. So if you haven't yet logged any time against it, an action, then that action will not appear on your timesheet. You can also, so once you have log time, it will then appear on the timesheet for the rest of the week. You've also got the ability to specify the sort order of actions on the project, as well as controlling the width of the project and the PAN and the action number fields. So role availability. So you've got the ability to set role availability on an individual role record or for specific periods of time via the role availability records. So we've ensured that role availability information is applied to key pages around resource planning, like the scheduler, the resource assignment wizard, the actual resource planner, and also the timesheet. So meeting manager, again, number of enhancements there. So to save users from having to click the save button when they're adding notes into the summary field. any changes. So as soon as you've entered notes into that field and then you've clicked out of it to lose focus of it, there will be an auto save. So the save button is no longer going to be visible. Everything will just automatically save for you. The summary section and the agenda task sections now have the ability to be collapsed and expanded. And previously you could log time for each individual agenda item. You've now got the option of either doing that, or you can log time for the entire meeting. A few user experience enhancements around the agenda items. They've now all got an auto number that's applied to the meeting manager, and you've also got an improved experience of dragging and dropping to order the agenda items into the right order. A couple of enhancements to the meeting notes PDF. There's some styling changes to some of the like the checkboxes. Also, you have the ability to include the objectives field value on the meeting notes, and you can also brand the sections for the actual meeting notes, like the attendees and the agenda items. So it just gives you the ability to apply different branding to the header sections for those two areas, just so they can be branded in your own corporate colors. So the Create Actions page, so we've added in a custom field set, allowing you the ability to control which fields are on there. And also there's a setting to control whether you can see the dependency field or not. So we'll cover all of those off as we go through the demo. So finally, minor enhancements that have been added. We have a number of customers wanting to be able to report at an individual time log level what the billable or cost hourly rates were. Because those rates can come from a number of different places, whether it's from the project, from the role, from rate adjustments. We needed to add in two fields onto the time log object, because also you have to factor in whether it might have been like the dollar value. You couldn't simply divide the dollar value by the number of hours completed, because it might have been overtime and an additional ratio might have been applied. So there's now two fields on the time log object, just called billable hourly rate and cost hourly rate, and they will be populated with the appropriate hourly rates that have been that we use to calculate the financials. There's some field sets being added to support additional customization to the project clone page and also the milestone clone page. So you'll find new field sets on the milestone and action objects to support that. There's a few validation rules being included to ensure the only person that can actually approve the time log is the person that's specified. So if you're trying to approve or reject a time log, you will only be able to do that if you are the role manager or the project owner. And then there's also a validation rule being added to the rate adjustment to ensure that if you are specifying a start, you must specify a start date if you're specifying an end date. Okay, so let's jump in and take a closer look at some of those key features. Okay, so I'm super excited to explain that there's a new method for calculating the billing and/or cost rates on a project. So the rate card financials is a method that you can apply to either the billing rate and/or the cost rate of your projects. So the rate card provides a method, provides a way of applying specific rates to all projects associated with a particular customer. So for each of your account records that you're doing project work for, you can create a rate card, and within that rate card, you can create rate card entries. So we're going to take a look at a rate card in a moment, but one of the prerequisites for using rate card financials is to make sure that that there's a new field being added to the role object called function. So you'll be able to see that I've added it to my list view here, and I've just gone down and added that value to each individual role record. So it comes with some preset values of project manager, consultant, designer, and so on. Now you can change these. This is a global pick list within Salesforce that you can control, and the field on the role and the field on the rate card entry will both be driven by those values. So the idea is you're specifying, for each of your individual people, what function are they performing. So you'll see here that I've been set as a project manager, as has Joel as well, and Alana's been set as a consultant. So when we're creating rate cards, we would do that from the account record. So you can see that I'm on an account record for Acme Inc. I've got my rate card related object. So I can click on New, and I'll just do that now just to show you what an empty one would look like. So what you've got the ability to do is just give it a rate card name. Now you might choose to have different rates for different types of projects, or a set of rates for a particular period of time. So giving it a name and then setting up rate card entries for each function. So I'm just going to back out of that and then show you my existing rate that I've got, my existing rate card that I've created. So you'll see here I've got my my rate card for Acme 2023 master rates, and what I've done is created rate card entries for these three various functions. So anyone who is a project manager is going to get charged at $200 an hour. Everyone who is a consultant will get charged at $180, and anyone who is a developer will get charged at $225. There's various backup rates that are used on the skill assignments, the role records, the rate adjustments, and so on. So all of that is in the user documentation. But ultimately, if a role is working on a project where this rate card is being used and they have a function of project manager, they would be charged at 200. If they have a function of consultant, they would be charged at 180. So I'm just going to jump over to a project that I have for Acme. I'll just quickly click into Edit to show you. So what I've done is obviously selected Acme as the account, and that allows me to then choose from the rate cards that relate to the Acme account. So I've selected the 2023 master rates, and then the key thing to note here is I've added in my new values of rate card to the billing rate and the cost rate. So I'm selecting rate card to be used as my billing rate, but I'm still using role based as my cost rate. So when I go and look at my actions, so I've got an action here where so if we just go back to our role record, so you'll see that my role record is set, my function is project manager, and Alana is set to consultant. So this is a 4-hour action. I've got 2 hours, and Alana has a contributor record for 2 hours as well. So basically 2 hours each on this. So if we scroll down, you'll see that the scheduled hours are being calculated. Basically 2 hours of my time at 200 each, and 2 hours of Alana's time at 180 each. So we're getting a total scheduled value billable of 760. So, and if we also just take a look at the time logs that have been associated to that. So I've logged an hour of time, and you can see that it's picking up my rate based on my function, and Alana's is picking up the 180 based on the function of her role record as well. So what that will allow you to do is actually create different rate cards for your various clients. You're not having to manage rates for individual people, but you can apply those rates for the for all of those functions. Going back to the rate card, you can also have you might have different rate card entries for the same function but using different skills. So consultant might have two different rates, one for the skill of needs analysis and one for solution documentation. So you can have as many rate card entries as required. You can also use the manage rates functionality within this as well. So whilst your standard rate for the project manager function is 200, you might actually have periods of time throughout the year where you want to adjust that. So similar to the way that you can use manage rates on all of the other financials, you can also apply that to the rate card entries as well. So phase is another new really cool feature that we've added into Mission Control, which gives you that optional layer between projects and milestones. So the idea is that you can choose to create your phases and then relate your milestones to those phases, and ultimately it will just give you an additional layer of grouping and reporting within your project plan structure. So you'll see. So I'm on a project here. I've got my Acme mission control implementation. Now, if I scroll down, you'll see I've got numerous milestones, and within each of those milestones, I've got actions and checklist items and so on. So looking down these, I might want to actually group these into phases. So for example, needs analysis and solution architecture may be relevant to put into a group called discovery. Functional configuration, testing, development, that might also be part of configuration or implementation. And then training and go live could be grouped into a phase called delivery. So what I'm able to do now with this phases functionality is so I can click onto my related list. You'll see that I have access to the phases related list. I've created 3 phases called discovery, implementation, and delivery. Now, once I've done that, I then just need to relate each of my milestones to one of those phases. So a very quick way of doing that is via the create milestones page, which I've already got open here. So you'll see through my field set that allows me to add additional fields to my create milestones page. I've added the phase lookup field. And I've gone through for each of my individual milestones. I've grouped them into a phase. So the first 2 are part of discovery, then functional, testing, technical. They're all part of implementation, and then training and go live are both part of the delivery phase. So one of the key benefits of the phases object is you get that 5th layer of information on the Gantt chart. So you'll see here I've got my project, I've got my phase, I've got my milestone, my actions, and then my checklist. So ultimately giving me a 5-layer project plan. And so if I have phases with milestones related to them, the phases will automatically appear on the Gantt chart for me. And obviously everything that's grouped within there, so like my all of my milestones and my actions, they're all there. So I can drag and drop the entire phase if I need to adjust that, and all of the milestones, actions, and checklists would move with it. So ultimately, I can see all of the different pieces of work that relate to those individual phases that I've created. And just jumping onto one page there, just to look at an individual phase. So there's a lot of the key information that you have sitting on the individual milestones is also available on the phase. So you can see key things like status, how many actions have been completed, how many total, all of the hours, whether it's scheduled, completed, remaining, both like billable, non-billable, totals, gives us all of that information. The real cool part of that is that will all get updated automatically for you asynchronously based on the changes you're making to your actions and milestones. So any change made to that milestone will automatically reflect on the phase. So there are a few things that aren't currently available with the phases object. So for example, you can't add a phase from the Gantt chart, you can't edit a phase from the Gantt chart, or you can't delete a phase from the Gantt chart. These are all things that we will start to add in as we see more usage of the functionality. If you're cloning a project and that project has phases, those phases won't be cloned, so you would need to create them on your new project. And phases are also not included in the auto generation logic from opportunities, and phases don't currently support dependencies either. But ultimately, so the phase will give you that ability to group your milestones into those areas to make your reporting and project structuring more suitable for those larger projects. We've introduced a new setting on the control pad within the project automation settings section called disable adjusting end date if start date changed. So this allows you to control the behavior of the working days and end date fields of an action when the start date is modified. So if the setting is false when the start date is adjusted and the working days field is not null, then the end date will be adjusted to be equal to start date plus working days. However, if this setting is true when the start date is adjusted and the working days is not null, then the working days field will be adjusted to equal end date minus start date. So we'll just take a quick look at both of those options, but really this is just a setting that gives individual customers the ability to choose what behavior they want to see on the end date as a result of changing the start date. So with that false, I'm going to go and edit my record here. So you'll see I've got an action. It's it's currently scheduled to start on the 9th and finish on the 11th, and it's currently 3 working days. So I'm going to change my my start date to be the 10th. So with that setting false, what I will expect to happen is because the working days is not null, the end date will be adjusted to be start date plus working days. So we'll see that that gets moved out by 1 day as well. So obviously still maintaining the 3 working days required to deliver that action. However, let's go and now set that to true. So we're gonna disable that feature. So what that means is this time round, because the setting is true, when I change the start date, the working days field will actually be adjusted to be end date minus start date. So in this example, we'll just move that forward another day. Now, because of the setting being disabled, we would expect this to stay as the 12th and the working days to be reduced to 2. So just we've identified certain customers are wanting it to work in one way, other customers are wanting it to work in another way. So we're adding in that flexibility so you can pick and choose how that works. So obviously by default that setting will be false. Therefore by default your result will be that your end date will be adjusted to be equal to the start date plus the working days. So we've included a field set on the TimeLog object that allows you to control the layout of the TimeLog component. So the TimeLog component that we're referring to is the component that's accessible from things like the log time bar within the utility bar, and you can access it via the whiteboard, the checklist board, the action pad, and so on. So there's a number of places that you can access this component within Mission Control, and by default, you'll recognize that this is what it looks like. So there are key fields that will always remain visible. You can't remove everything and customize everything. There are key things that are required, like the date, the project member, the project milestone action, and status. But all of the other fields are available for you to choose. So by default, it will look like this. But you now have a field set on the TimeLog object called log time component fields. Now, if I go into there, you'll see this is currently empty. So as a result of it being empty, it will just display as the default. If I add fields into this, my fields selected will override the default settings. So I'm just going to drag hours completed, overtime, and time log notes. So that's what I've decided. These are the only fields that I want to appear on there. So if I click on save and then go back and just open that up again. So you'll see it's now modified to only show me. So obviously those core fields that will always be visible, but the fields that have been added to my field set are only the fields that are being displayed. Now, if I decide actually I would rather revert back to the default, all I need to do is actually go back to my field set and then remove my selections, and then we'll revert back to the default. So remove those fields, click on Save, and then if I open that up again, we'll be back to the default settings. So really just allowing customers to pick and choose which fields are important to them and modify the layout to make it optimal for their use case. There's a number of new enhancements being added to the Gantt chart that impact both the standalone Gantt chart and the Gantt chart specific to an individual project. So the first one of those features is the ability to save preset filters on the standalone Gantt chart. So previously you could have an individual filter persistently remembered. So for example, if I want to filter the Gantt chart to only show projects where I am the project owner, that's just one filter being applied on one field, and that would be persistently remembered between visits. But if I want to apply multiple filters, for example, where I am the project owner and where category equals a certain value, then I would have that wouldn't be persistently remembered, and I would have to apply those filters every time I came into the Gantt chart. So now within the Gantt chart, you've got within the filters modal, you've got the ability to configure your filters. So whether it is an individual filter or like multiple filters, and then you can save them in the same way you can save preset filters anywhere else, like the whiteboard and so on. So I've got an example here where I've got a filter that's showing where I am the project owner and where category equals client implementation. And then I've saved another filter where I've got a similar thing where category equals client implementation, but the project owner is someone else. So this is loading, and this is so the one for my record is actually loading my three projects. So if I just collapse that there, you'll see I've got 3 projects. So now if I quickly go in and toggle that over to look at Geordie's filter, and then I can load that in. And then that's only showing the one project that matches that filter criteria. So if I was to now navigate away from this page and then come back, this filter would be persistently applied for me. So the benefit is you can persistently apply filters that are looking at multiple fields. Few other enhancements that we've added. I mentioned earlier the holidays used to be displayed on the Gantt chart as non-working days if they were global holidays. Now all holidays will be visible. So if someone is on PTO, or if it's a team holiday assigned, if it's a holiday assigned to a specific team, they'll all be visualized on the Gantt chart. So you can see here, looking at Mick, we can see that he's actually going to be on holiday. So those days for his rows are flagging up as non-working days. The other feature that that sort of supports that enhancement is when you change the action owner, you're able to actually adjust the actions based on that person's PTO. So for example, I'm currently responsible for preparing these training materials. I'm just going to show you a couple of new features here, because one of the other features is the ability to actually reassign ownership directly via the inline edit. So first of all, I'm going to do that just by double clicking in here. I'm going to start typing the person's name that I want to reassign to. So I select that. And then as I click out of that, you'll notice the other feature is that it's automatically identified that that person is actually on PTO this day. So it's automatically adjusted the action to be the next available working day that that person can do it. And then anything that is dependent on that is also being rescheduled as well. Couple of other minor enhancements. So we've got when we hover over like milestones, actions, checklists, you get these tooltips. Now these fields that are already visible, they'll always be there, but you can add additional fields to any of the objects, like the project, the milestone, the action, and so on. You'll find a field set on the relevant object. So if I just toggle over to my field sets for my action object, you'll see there is a Action Gantt Chart Tooltips field. So if I go into there and add any fields from the available fields that are there to be selected from, I drag them down there, then they would appear underneath the tooltips information that's already there. So that's just a way of you surfacing additional information that you consider important directly on the Gantt chart. The other new feature is the end date warnings. So similar to how we've got start and end date warnings on the project overview, on the whiteboard, and so on, you've also got the ability to display those on the Gantt chart. Now that can actually be toggled on or off based on a custom setting. So there's a new setting in the Gantt chart. So if you want to hide, by default, they will be turned on. If you want to turn them off, you just set that setting to true. And again, that can also be done by the control pad for every user if you are overriding the Gantt chart settings. We've also applied a number of enhancements to the timesheet. So a few different things to cover off here. So one of them is the ability to collapse your rows. So you'll see here that I've got a number of actions assigned to me that are relating to the Acme Mission Control implementation project, as well as a few other actions relating to other projects here. So if I don't want to, I don't want to remove this stuff from my timesheet, but I do actually want to just declutter it and not take up too much space. If I actually collapse one of those, you'll see it collapses all of the actions relating to the same project. So just allow me to quickly collapse and really focus in on the actions that I'm looking for. So I can do that on individual actions, just and when I do that for an individual action, it will expand or collapse all of the actions relating to that project. So again, if I open up one of these actions relating to the Acme project, it will open up them all. We also have these two buttons up here that allow me to quickly collapse or expand everything. So if I've got a lot of different projects that I'm working on, I can collapse everything, quickly find the right project, and then only just open up exactly what I need. So we've added in a setting that allows you to choose whether you display or hide the approvals information. So you'll see up in the top section of the timesheet and over on the right-hand side of each individual row, we've got some approval status information. Now, if you're not using approvals, you might want to remove that to avoid any unnecessary information. So what we've got is the ability to actually hide that information. So we've now got hide approval status information. So if I set that to true and then go back, so you'll see the approvals information at the top and over on the right-hand side has now been removed, obviously removing unnecessary information from being displayed to my users. So I'm just going to turn that back on. So another setting that we've added is the ability to really just start your week with a blank timesheet. So I'm just going to go and navigate to next week where I haven't logged any time. So you'll see by default, every action that is assigned for me to be working on next week is already loaded by default for me to quickly log time. But if I don't necessarily intend on working on every single one of these things next week, I just want to start with a blank timesheet, then we've got a setting in here that allows you to hide actions with no time logs for this week. So if I click on save, so you'll see now when I look at next week, I'm actually starting with a blank timesheet. So the idea here is what I can do is actually just go and find the project that I'm working on, load in the particular action, and then log my time for that. Now, if I do my hours and log my time, then the next time I come to the timesheet, that action will already be displayed because I've already logged time on it. So it really allows you to start with a blank timesheet, and then as you're working through various actions across the week, your timesheet will build up with a list of all of the actions that you have actually logged time for. So again, if you don't want that setting, it's just a case of setting that back to false. So we've also got a another setting. So by default, the sort order of the records being displayed on the timesheet are sorted by, first of all, project name, then milestone name, and then action name. So you now have the ability within the settings to choose the sort order. So there is a section now where you can specify. So you've got three options, and you can specify the you can specify the actual objects that you want to use, the field, and then the sort order. So by default, as I say, it's project name, milestone name, action name, but this setting allows you to configure your own sort order requirements. The other new setting that we've added in is to address a request from some customers to be able to expand the width of the project, the pan, and the action columns. So, so they're set to certain default values. If you want to shorten those or widen those, you can come in using the column width settings and just put in pixel numbers. So the idea is you put in your pixel values. So for example, let's say I'm going to set that to 400, and just to exaggerate, I will put this one to 1000 and click on save. So you'll see now that my widths have been dramatically adjusted based on those settings. So again, if I need to revert to defaults, it's just a case of removing those values. Okay, so the other thing that has been added to the timesheet is the ability to have filters here as well. So this gives you the ability to apply filters to the timesheet. So again, for example, you might want to avoid having certain projects displayed on your timesheet, or you might want, whilst you're assigned to a certain number of actions, you might only want to be filtering to a specific set. So you've got the ability to apply filters here, as well as save those filters so they can be persistently set each time you're using the timesheet. We've also added some, made some enhancements to the approvals page. So if I click onto the approvals tab, so previously, time logs were displayed grouped by project, milestone, and action. We've added in a couple of enhancements where you, if you've related your time log to a checklist, it will also be grouped by the checklist underneath the action. And if you've also related your time log to an issue, you will have visibility of which issue it relates to as well. So in addition to the grouping by checklist item, we've also introduced the ability to add additional custom fields to the layout. So you can already pick and choose which of the standard fields are included via the timesheet settings. But if you want to add additional custom fields to the approvals page, then you can do that via a field set, and they will appear to the right of the rejection comment. So you can see here that I've already added on time log type, and that's there visible for me. That's all controlled via a field set on the time log object called Timesheet Approvals tab Custom Fields. So you can see there that I've already added in my time log type, but if I wanted to remove that or add anything else in, I can use that field set to control that. So on the role record and the role availability records, you're already able to specify, like, which days of the week an individual person works. What we've done is leverage that information and applied it to key pages like the scheduler, the timesheet, the resource planner, really if someone is not working on a particular day, that will now be considered a non-working day for them. So you'll see here just a simple example on Lane's role record. I've specified that she doesn't work on a Thursday, so that's now considered a non-working day for her. So then when we look at things like the timesheet, you'll see Thursday's flagged up as a non-working day for her. If I have a look at the scheduler, you'll see Thursday again is flagged up as a non-working day for Lane, and similarly on the resource planner, it's also flagging up as a non-working day for her. So that will be driven by the record, the field values on the role record, or if you are using the role availability records underneath the role, it will be driven by that as well. So we've also applied a number of enhancements to the meeting manager and the meeting notes PDF. So first of all, one of the simple things is just to give customers a better experience on being able to access the agenda item or the agenda tasks. You can actually collapse those, and if you never use the agenda item and you purely use the agenda tasks, then you can leave that persistently collapsed, so you can immediately have access to your agenda tasks, and vice versa. If you're only ever using that, then you can keep the other one closed. So there's just a minor update there. We've also introduced an auto save within the summary field. So previously there used to be a save box here that would allow you to make changes and click on save. We introduced in a previous release auto saving on changing these fields. So therefore it was only this field that was that required the manual save. So we've removed that, and just so basically you type information into the summary field and then click out of that, so that field loses focus and the save will automatically happen. You've also got the ability to log time. So previously you used to log time for each individual agenda item. Now over on the time logger, you'll see that you've got the ability to specify whether you're logging time for the meeting or for an individual agenda item. So for customers who aren't necessarily looking to track that granular time discussing each individual agenda item, you can just log time for the meeting. So select meeting, click on start or log the time, and that will record that time for everyone for the entire meeting rather than for individual agenda items. A couple of other things around agenda items. We've now got an auto numbering feature where you can, so each agenda item will have a number attached to it, and that will automatically appear. And you can also drag and drop actions. So if I want to drag and drop to resort the order, I can just I can do that. And then so previously I had to click a button to move up each position, whereas now I can obviously just drag and drop and relocate items as required, and that will adjust that accordingly. The other thing that we've done is enhance the PDF just to give customers a bit more control over the branding. So I'll just show you, and as well as the branding, we've also just enhanced the checkbox icons here. So previously it wasn't as clear as it is now. So so you can see you've got empty boxes here showing that it hasn't been resolved, and clearly something has been ticked or hasn't been ticked. The objective field value of the meeting will also appear in the summary section here, and so you also have the ability to brand this pink and this orange to meet your own corporate branding. So on the control pad, there's meeting manager settings now, to where you can come in and specify your own hexadecimal references. Once you set those settings, you'll see that the actual PDF, so if you just the PDF, so the headers of those two sections will be branded with your own corporate colors. So we've also introduced some trigger logic to manage the sharing of the objects, the meeting manager, the meeting, the agenda item, and the agenda task. So the relationship between all those objects are lookups. Therefore, if a customer wanted to apply sharing rules to the meeting manager object, the rules would need to be applied to all of the other objects individually as well. So to simplify that sharing requirement, Mission Control will now automatically apply all of the sharing records on the meeting manager record to the meeting, the agenda item, and the agenda tasks. So therefore, you're able to set your org-wide default for all of the objects to private, and then any rules that you apply to the meeting manager will be replicated automatically on the other three objects. We've also made an enhancement to the Create Actions page. So in a previous release, we had provided the ability to select up to 5 additional custom fields to be added to the Create Actions page, and that can be done from the control pad of the Mission Control console. That feature still exists, but for customers who want to be able to remove some of our existing out of the box fields or potentially add more than 5 custom fields, we've built in an additional more detailed way of controlling the fields that are visible on the Create Actions page via a field set. So by default, obviously, there are the set number of fields displayed as we can see here, and if you want to use the initial basic way of doing this, adding custom fields, you can do that on the control pad by selecting the additional fields that we've got here. If you want to get a bit more granular in which fields you're adding, if you want to add more than 5 custom fields, if you want to remove some of the standard fields that appear by default, you can choose to, instead of using these settings, you can actually choose to override this. So what you'd need to do is set that to true, click save, and then go and populate the fields that you want to appear on using the field set on the action object, using the Create Actions field set. So you'll be able to drag on as many fields as you need, and then that will control the fields that appear on the page layout. The only things to note are the milestone field, the action name field, and the action owner field are not available within the field set, because they will always be displayed on the Create Actions page by default. You can't control that because they're obviously required fields that are needed in order to be able to manage your records. The only other thing to highlight is this dependency column is not an actual field on an object within Mission Control. So it's a field that's specifically added to this page. So if you do want to actually remove that, there's just a separate setting there to hide that dependency field as well. Okay, thank you for your time. That's everything that we're going to focus on in the demo. Obviously, within the release notes, there's further details around the fields that are being added, the validation rules that are being added. So you'll certainly want to review any profiles or permission sets and page layouts to make sure you're taking advantage of the new functionality. So let's take a look at when this is going to be coming out. So as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be available as of the 13th of January for you to manually upgrade from the Salesforce App Exchange. We'll then roll it out on the 21st of January to all sandbox orgs, and then on the 28th of January we'll automatically upgrade all production orgs. So with all of that said, really appreciate your time. Hope you enjoy the new functionality and look forward to hearing any feedback that you have for future upgrades as well. Thanks for your time. Bye.